A very hearty welcome to my channel Grow Joyfully. In around 12 videos shared so far, I have demonstrated the vermicomposting journey that I do at home in urban context on a small scale. In the first 3 videos, I explained the worm bin requirements, the bedding, and also the different kinds of worm species that we can use. In the next 5 videos, I explained in detail about feeding the worms with greens, making the observations and troubleshooting. As we got ready for the harvest, in 2 videos, I explained the guidelines and observations to make and the different techniques that we can adopt. In the last 2 videos that I shared, I demonstrated how I do harvesting using the vertical migration, scraping and the pyramid techniques. Having harvested the vermicompost, what are the choices in front of us? That's what we are going to see in this video. This is the black gold that I have harvested from migration technique as well as the dump and sort, weighing 12.5 kgs. Three components. One is of course the castings. Second one is twigs like this, which I will leave them for aeration. Third is there could be a lot of cocoons here which I really cannot see. And there could also be some tiny tots which escaped migration like this. And finally, there is also some undigested matter like dry moist leaves. In fact, I put them from the new batch here. I am sharing my practice here. I consciously put some brown matter here, and also I put a watermelon rind, or I put some fruit which is liked by the worms. Why do I do it? Because there are cocoons here which I have not sieved at all. They take 2 weeks to emerge from the cocoons, and when the tiny tots come, they will be hungry. So they will eat up this kind of brown matter which is available here, and also the green matter that I will put, something interesting for them. So for the next 2 to 3 weeks, I am not going to use it for my plants at all. If you are using red wigglers, my suggestion would be not to keep it so moist during harvest. You can keep it a little less moist, and once you ensure that there are no tiny tots, you only have cocoons here, you may want to use a 1/8 inch sieve in order to remove the cocoons, because I don't have experience with red wigglers, but I am told and I read that red wigglers cannot thrive in potting mix or in containers or in soil. So you might want to remove the cocoons, sieve the cocoons with 1/8 sieve and put them in the new batch. But since I am using more of Indian native worms, African night crawlers, etc., I don't do anything of that sort. I just keep it here and keep a bait for them to remove the tiny tots as much as possible. But maybe 1 or 2% of tiny tots are still there, and I put them in the potting mix. Maybe a little bit of brown matter is also there, that also goes to my containers in the potting mix, and they all get disintegrated there. So my harvest usually stops at this level. You will never find the harvest that I make to be the same as the store-bought one, because the store-bought vermicompost will be dried. They dry it and then they ensure that every worm is removed, and perhaps they may even remove cocoons also. So it will be very powdery, and mine is not powdery, it's a little damp like this, because I am going to leave this for 2 weeks, and there are cocoons and tiny worms which need feed. So I can actually take a portion of this and then dry it, sieve it and show it to you, and that will exactly look like store-bought stuff. Today is 20th of June. We have already harvested the vermicompost with using many techniques 5 days back. I just took a sample and I kept it in shade completely for it to dry. And this is only to show you, in case you want to sieve. Now I am using a very coarse sieve now, just to show you how it looks. This is to remove any undigested matter, any non-eaten brown matter. Please never do the sieving when there are worms around. Ensure that the worms have been isolated before you do the sieving, because if you do the sieving with worms around, it's very traumatic for them. It's very difficult for them to bear that pain. So please don't do that. Ensure that you've removed everything. This is the sieved compost. You can see that it's very powdery. No worms can live on this. It may contain certain castings, but castings require moisture uh, for the eggs to come out. So I don't think that's going to happen also. In India, we get it even more finely sieved. Even the small twigs like this that you see, which went off the coarse sieve, you will not find them at all. Let me just show you how you get it. This is a household sieve that I am using. In order to get a very fine sieve, you can see how the sieving happens. This is how store-bought vermicompost looks like in India. Very powdery. They also use mechanical devices in order to sieve this. Using a very fine mesh actually. At home I find this to be a laborious process, and I don't think it is required also when we are doing on a small scale for use in our own garden. This is the harvest that we got last week. This is the one which was dried, and then I used a coarse sieve. This is the one that was used to get this, and then I used a very fine sieve in order to get the very powdery one. Probably this contains cocoons, this does not contain cocoons, and because I have dried, none of them contain worms. But this may probably contain a few worms, and also it will contain cocoons because I have not removed them, and possibly it contains some amount of brown matter also, which was not eaten by the worms. For household consumption, that is for our own use, not for commercial application, I mentioned that this is adequate. I say this for two reasons. One, there are cocoons here, whether you use red wigglers or Indian native worms, and they take about 2 weeks to hatch. So if you leave them for 2 weeks like this in a moist condition, then you get the tiny tots emerging. And these tiny tots can be isolated using a bait, like you keep a watermelon rind or a mango rind, and they will come running towards it, right? And you can easily isolate them. And then you can use, at that point in time, even if you delay it a little, there is some brown matter also for them to consume. The second reason is, even if this undigested matter 1% is remaining and it goes to the containers or the potting mix, I don't see anything wrong. The final decomposition will happen there. And even if 1% of cocoons do not hatch here, they hatch in the container, then they will be able to grow there, provided they are not red wigglers. They are native Indian worms. I am presenting the metrics data for this batch as part of my sharing of the joyful journey. This will enable to see how rewarding the activity is and what a great return on investment I got. I started the batch on April 1st and did the harvest on 15th June. So the elapsed time was 2.5 months. But overall time spent by me on this batch was a maximum of 1.5 hours. I split this time as follows: approximately half an hour for preparing the bedding material, getting it organized, half an hour for doing the weekly observations once or twice a week for about 10 weeks, and half an hour maximum for the harvest. The cost for me was a mere rupees 150. Of course, I did use an already existing old tub with me, but this kind of a tub costs around 100 rupees in India, even if you buy a new one. And I'm including 50 rupees for the Ganajivamrita that I used. The rest of the material, both for bedding as well as the kitchen waste, was totally available free. If you are in India and if you are new to vermicomposting, I would strongly recommend using a tub like what I showed. It's easily available all over India. The surface area is more, the height is less. And in the last 5 years, I've always found worms finding this ambience in the tub very, very appropriate. The tub that I used can easily handle around 250 to even 300 worms. But in order to simulate the journey of a person new to vermicomposting, I just started with 100 to 150 worms. I really didn't count though. Similarly, the harvested worms were also not countable, but I think I got a minimum of 200 worms definitely. The moistened bedding that I used, both initially as well as top up, came to around 25 kgs, and the greens inputs were around 2 kg overall. The unsieved vermicompost weighed 12.5 kgs. As the matrix shows, you can see that it calls for very little effort and time as well as cost in order to generate the black gold consistently. All that is required is to stay aligned with Mother Nature's requirements and also take care of the food, ambience and shelter requirements of these great warriors. I've been enjoying a consistently joyful journey in vermicomposting all these 5 years, and I pray and wish you the same too. Next, in a series of 3 videos, I plan to share certain facts about the worms. These facts actually translate to certain requirements and preferences that the worms have. And if we stay aligned with them, and if we perform all tasks according to these requirements, we don't have to troubleshoot at all. We will not face any issues. Our journey will be smooth and it will always be rewarding. Stay tuned. I'll be sharing these videos soon. Thank you for watching my videos. Have a great day.